Hey everyone, it's good to see you guys. I'm really excited. I have a special guest here. Very honored. We have Lisa Romano with us today. She's a certified life coach and an expert in the field of codependency and narcissistic abuse. She's also a best-selling author of many books, such as The Road Back to Me. She's a speaker, a popular YouTube vlogger, and right now she runs online coaching programs, such as her 12-week breakthrough program that helped wounded adult children, some of whom have had years of conventional therapy and who have also tried various types of medications, learned to heal their lives through her unique healing approach. Lisa, I'm really excited for you to be here. I've been really looking forward to this for quite some time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So I really guess whenever I do these interviews, and typically I have Laura on, but it's 3 a.m. in Australia right now for her, and I know our schedules didn't work out. But normally when we do these interviews, we like to keep them real conversational. And really where I wanted, I guess, to start with this conversation is, with your experience, what do you see the difference between an interdependent relationship and a codependent relationship?
So like we were talking earlier, and I like your description, is that codependency is tied to a need and interdependence is tied to a want. And so when I think about being codependent, I have to understand that codependency is rooted in unconscious programming, right? It's rooted in this idea that I'm not enough, I'm powerless. Most oftentimes codependents feel powerless, they struggle with shame, and it's rooted in abandonment trauma. The inability to have gained a secure attachment or a nurturing bond to a caretaker, and specifically mom in most cases. Just feeling wounded, pushed away, and rejected, and unable to gain the bond and the connection and the nurturing a child needs in order to develop proper brain development, in order to feel secure, I am enough, in order to go into kindergarten feeling like, I got this, I got this, first and second grade, hey, I got this. Not destroyed when their peers don't play with them or don't like them, or there's a little bump in the road. When you have shame because you've been unable to secure an attachment to a caregiver, you think it's your fault and you carry that with you.
Right.
And this becomes, below the age of 7, you're in a theta brainwave state. So what's happening outside of you is like everybody's a hypnotist because you're downloading rapidly what's happening. And this becomes a program. This becomes data. This becomes a pattern. And we're not taught, I believe we will be eventually, but we're not taught to be objective about the way that we think. We're not taught to think about the way that we think or to think about the way that we feel. We think that our feelings are us, and so we react. And so when I feel this need to attach and bond to someone, I think it's me. I think I want this. No, it's your programming that wants it. It's your wounded ego. It's your inner child. It's attachment trauma screaming, bond, 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 bond. It's not you. It's your programming. And so codependency is tied to this unconscious drive to bond with someone at the expense of myself. So when I am in a relationship and I am codependent, I make that relationship my everything. I make that person's dreams and that person's goals my everything. I don't know that I'm running from myself. I don't know that I don't know how to self-care. I don't know that. I'm not aware of that. I just know that I have this unconscious compulsion to bond and attach to someone at the expense of myself. And so when we're thinking about an interdependent relationship, we're talking about self-actualization. We're talking about somebody who has learned to be self-reliant and self-responsible and self-accountable. And so in life, they've learned to take care of themselves financially, spiritually, emotionally. They have an I. They've worked through their stuff, and they're not coming from I'm not enough anymore. I have an I, and I'm worthy. And at this stage of my life, I know that I have a right to manifest someone into my experience that can mirror back to me the love, the empathy, and the kindness, and the respect, the joy, the excitement about life that I have. Because that's the only way I'm going to expand, is if I meet somebody who has the same type of qualities that I have. It's the only way I'm going to be able to expand. If I manifest anything less, then I'm really going to devalue myself,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. But we don't know that. And so
Mm-hmm.
interdependence to me is a conscious choice to love. So I can love someone who's dysfunctional and choose not to jump into bed with them. Or I
Mm-hmm.
can consciously love and respect and see the I am that I am in this person who's struggling and choose not to pay their rent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I can unconditionally love someone, but not at the expense of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so codependence is compulsive. It's unconscious. It's really comes from a wounded lack place. Please make me feel like I'm good enough. And interdependence comes from, wait a minute, I am enough. And so are you. Let's see how far we can make this travel, in life. Let's see how far we can go as a couple, because we need to celebrate ourselves. And so, there's a big difference between an interdependent relationship and a codependent. One is healthy and one is completely destructive.
Mm. That was a beautiful response. I mean, there was so much in that. I have like 8 or 9 conversational threads that came up in my mind at once. But I guess I would want to take it. Can some elements, like, is there a middle space where, like some aspects of our life we might be more codependent, like in the relationship, because it's not just like a one all. It's very nuanced.
Mhm.
So I guess my question would be, really, is there areas where that codependency can still play out even if you've created financial security for yourself, emotional security for yourself? Like, is it still possible for that to creep into a relationship, even if you found that center, that I-ness, that sense of being of who you really are? Is it still possible for those patterns to play out, at least in smaller forms?
I think if you're codependent and it's rooted in the sense of I'm not enough, and if you've struggled with abandonment, if you've come from a dysfunctional home, if you've been raised by a narcissist, a rager, a perfectionist, an alcoholic, if you've been raised by parents who are aloof and they just didn't know how to emotionally connect to you, if you've been raised by parents who made you feel like you're just never going to be able to be enough to gain their love and their acceptance, and that's where your codependency comes from, then you have to be aware of that, I think, for the rest of your life, because relationships trigger codependency.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, when I'm codependent, I'm hyper vigilant on how my partner feels, on how my kids feel, how my neighbor feels, how my boss feels, I'm outside of myself, right?
Mm.
Because I've had to live outside of myself to survive my experience as a child. I had to be hyper vigilant to make
Right.
sure I didn't get yelled at, and so I'm not connected to the self.
So this brings up a really interesting question around sensitivity, empathy, and relationship. Have you seen a connection between? I mean, I certainly saw this within my own life, and it took me years of therapy and coaching to finally get to a point where I could actually feel myself and I could
Mhm.
choose to push out those energies and feel other people and know the difference between the two. Do you see a connection between growing up in that type of dysfunctional home where there isn't that safety or security there for the natural self to bloom, and a high degree of sensitivity and empathy to others' needs?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have, where I've had people say, was I born super sensitive, or was the fact that my parents were so insensitive or desensitized to me that I became hypersensitive? So I think it's a really worthwhile conversation to have. But if you're asking me, I don't believe in black and whites at all. But I do believe that, in my humble opinion, I do believe that there are children who can be born more sensitive. So, we have 3 children, and my parents gave birth to 3 kids. I'm the oldest. I was sensitive to, if I heard a chainsaw at 7, I was upset, because I was like, they're cutting down a tree. Like, the
Mm-hmm.
tree has feelings, or,
Yeah.
that's like, the tree has feelings. Like, we shouldn't be cutting, it was just, why was I tuned into that? Where my brother was like, what are you talking about? It's just a tree, and my sister's like, what's going on? So I was, in my own experience, I very much felt like, uh-oh, why do I feel that? And whose feelings am I feeling? I couldn't tell the difference. And so, yes, if you're a highly sensitive person, if you have high empathy, and studies have shown that women who have high empathy, who are highly intelligent, are magnets for psychopaths because
Yeah.
they're also highly forgivable.
Right. Right.
Somebody with high empathy is always trying to figure out why this person has hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're somebody who walks through life, why has this person hurt them? Oh, it must be from pain. Then you annihilate yourself from my I experience. Well, how did this affect me?
Right.
How did
Right.
this affect me? And it happens over and over and over and over again, where somebody who has high empathy, is highly forgiving, is trying to understand the abuser
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and is lost in, yeah, but I know why she said that.
Right.
I
So
know.
I can justify it and let it go.
Yeah. And then what we don't realize is that that's the leaky faucet, right? So that's the tiny hole in the yacht, and the yacht sinking over time. We just,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a gaping hole, but you're sinking. You just know that you don't know that you're sinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's so important, I've had, not often, but I've had people say, why do you always talk about, what the parents have done to their children? I'm like, because you can't fix the wall you can't see.
Right.
My mother abused me because she never realized that her mother was an abusive alcoholic. And so
Yeah.
she didn't know that she was abusive.
Right. Right.
So if I can't reach the parents, I'm going to reach the adult children, say, did you grow up in a home like this? Do you have high empathy? Were you taught to worry about your mother yelling at you? Were you taught to worry about daddy coming home drunk? What were you taught to worry about? Who worried about you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if no one taught you to worry about you, you're not worrying about you.
Right.
You're
Right.
worried about everybody else.
And that's where the needs just kind of slip out the door and the sense of self is completely lost.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's like you can look at the most beautiful yacht on the ocean. If there's a hole in that boat, it's going to sink. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of time. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not sinking, because it happens slowly over time. And
Beautiful.
that's what it's like when you are an empath, when you come from a dysfunctional home, when you struggle with abandonment issues, when you've been taught to disown your inner reality. You think all I have to do is take care of somebody and I'll be fine. You
Mm-hmm.
think that taking care of someone else, or jumping into other people's trauma and drama, gets you to avoid how you feel, and it does, but you're sinking because you're giving your energy towards an experience that's draining. And very oftentimes, codependence manifests people with high narcissistic traits who are self-focused, and a codependent is other-focused.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a codependent and I make you my world, I've just manifested someone who's like, give me all your energy, all your attention, give me all your money, get rid of your kids, focus on me. I'm hungry. I need more money. I need more this. And I'm just working to make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
So my
Mm-hmm.
energy is being expended towards this experience and nothing's coming back.
Right. There's not that reciprocation.
No. So you have to be careful if you identify as a codependent forever, because it's very easy to become triggered, especially if your partner needs something, or if you need to set a boundary with your partner. I don't like that. That's where codependency can get triggered, even in the best of relationships. I still have to tell myself, with my husband, we have a lovely relationship, but I still, if I'm upset about something, or I don't, he's made a joke I don't find particularly funny, I have to say, I didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary because I love him and I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to start an unnecessary argument. But if I don't honor myself and give him an opportunity to see the real me, I don't feel like I'm being authentic.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I love that. And I can really relate to that. I mean, I think I wish I knew the Japanese word for it, but I love some of the forms of martial arts, like Tai Chi, Wing Chun. And they talk about speaking the heart's truth in every moment, every instance, honoring the innermost self all the time. And it's definitely a way of being that I think as you've seen in our interactions, that I mean, I've committed to myself as well from that past. I think we might have similar pasts in that regard. And it's scary because most of the times, if you voiced your true feelings when you were a child, it was met with emotional harshness or backlash or things like this. And a natural repression of the self happened and occurred in response to that.
Yeah, and it makes sense because, you know, a mother's connection to a newborn child is tied to survival.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
so, you know, anything that threatens that connection psychologically, emotionally, or physically, the child is going to want to defend. So, in other words, like if I say, Mommy, I'm hungry, and she pushes me away, or she says that I'm annoying, or I have no right to be hungry because she's tired, and I sense that, uh-oh, my connection to my mother is threatened, I'm going to suppress my need to be hungry and tell her how I feel, because
Right.
that bond to my mother is instinctive.
Mm-hmm.
It's instinctive. So we come here to bond. So even codependency, to become codependent is instinctive. Doesn't make
Mm.
it healthy, but it's
Mm-hmm.
instinctive to like want to care and want to bond and want to nurture. It's instinctive. But when it's coming from an unconscious place, it can be destructive.
Mm.
So it's
Mm.
a beautiful thing to bond with someone and want to care for someone in an interdependent way, in a conscious way, in a loving way, in a way that expresses this idea that we're in this together. You know,
Mm.
I'm not going to love you at the expense of loving myself, and I don't want you to put me on a pedestal at the expense of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't want that. Let's just see each other fairly and honestly. Let's communicate. I see you. I hear you. There might be times I piss you off. You might have a boundary like, Lisa, I don't like when you say that. Okay, thank you for telling me. I love you. I honor you. I'll make sure that never happens again.
Mm. Mm.
But to hear that, you've got to have a pretty healed ego.
Mm-hmm.
Because when people tell you something about yourself that's hard to hear, the more wounded you are, the more your natural ego defense is to push it back. It's autonomic and automatic.
Right. Right. Lisa, how would you help individuals in a relationship then? Let's say they've both kind of come from these backgrounds, they've done healing work. What's the best way you can navigate that relationship in that space where you both know that you're aware of these backgrounds and how they can potentially play out? Because I mean, I just have seen with my own clients and even in my own life at times where that response goes up, gets triggered, and I'm more than aware of it now to speak to it and not allow it to run away. But that definitely plays out in relationships. And I mean, it can take the relationship down a bad turn if we're not aware of that. How would you say you navigate that terrain and space with a partner? Like,
I think the most important thing any couple can do is to identify a goal. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Do you
right.
want to punish or do you want to understand? Do you want to win or do you want a 50-50? And lots of times, I mean, I've coached couples where it's just like, I don't know, I think I want to win, you know, or I think I want to be right. And I go, okay, so we're going to be here a while.
Right.
It's going to
Yeah.
cost you a lot of money
Yeah. Yeah.
to figure this out. Because I've had some clients who are like, I want her or I want him to know he's wrong.
Right.
And I said, so what you're saying is you want to be right.
Mm.
So it's important that you want to be right. And what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to identify a goal. And if the goal is to be a happy, harmonious couple and figure out this relating thing, because when you come into a relationship with abandonment trauma, you see after the honeymoon phase is over, you see
Oh
abandonment.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he left his socks on the floor. I know why he left his socks on the floor. Oh, she didn't text me right away. I know she's playing games. I know why she didn't text me right away. It's like,
Mm.
oh, no. the sock. He just forgot to put his socks in the hamper.
And it didn't mean anything else. Right.
And she literally got in the shower, got out of the shower, left her phone, on the bed and went to the dry cleaner. That's why she didn't text you back. So it's really having, number one, you have to identify what your goal is. Do you want to be happy? Do you want to have a harmonious, fair relationship? Or do you want to have this back and forth where he thinks he has to accept that you're right and he's wrong? And you want this one-up relationship, because that's not a relationship.
Right. So it sounds like it's giving space for two subjective realities to coexist without one other person being like, oh, my subjective reality is the right objective reality. And
yeah, but it's also understanding that you can't be married or you can't be in a relationship where you don't share some sense of reality. So although I have this subjective reality, which might be the result of childhood programming, right? So I have this reality. I remember, for instance, I was in the bathroom, and I'm always checking my thoughts because I know I'm a recovering codependent for life. And I was annoyed. I immediately felt, oh, I'm annoyed because the towel's on the floor in the bathroom. And so I go through I hear it in my head start like, why does he leave the towels on the floor?
Right.
Like, why? Right. And so I just put my big girl panties on and I said to him, babe, is there any reason why you leave the towels on the floor? And he's like, well, we have heated floors in the bathroom. And I just took a shower and I figured let the floor dry out the towel before I throw it in the hamper so it doesn't smell. And I thought, oh, it had nothing to do with me. My husband left the towel on the floor for a reason, and it was valid.
Right.
So just one point, what I needed to do is I have to be willing as a partner to join him in his reality. You understand? Because I don't think you can have a healthy relationship without some idea of a shared reality. You could have your own reality and respect his reality or her reality. But at the end of the day, there's got to be some shared reality, in my opinion.
So I just so I can understand your thinking a little bit better and that where that thinking's coming from, Lisa, when you were saying about the towel story, was that a thought that person was doing something to like offend you or upset you, or it was some passive aggressive move? Was that where like the foundation of the thinking?
I think in my head, well, you have the background is that I was married to someone who's incredibly lazy and inconsiderate. Right. So this is all part of my background. Right. And so my background is I was the one who did everything. That's my background. Right. And so when I see the towel on the floor, it's a little triggering for me because I'm like, why can't you just be helpful? Why not just put, instead of me walking into the bathroom and me having to pick it up, why not just put it away so I don't have to do it?
Okay.
Right? So it's a lack of, you're not being considerate type thing. That's where my mind was going. Oh, there's inconsideration here. This is, so that's where my mind was going. And so because I know what my goal is, I want peace with my husband. I want to understand him. I want to meet him halfway. I don't want to have a critical relationship with him. I don't want that. That is clearly every day of my life. I want love. I want respect. I want understanding. That's why I said the most important thing for a couple is, what is your goal? That is my goal. So when I hear this little crappy, creepy crawler coming into my head, and it is the opposite of what I want to experience with my husband, it's up to me to take control over it and say, be a big girl and ask him why. And if it really bothers you so much and the answer that he gives you doesn't make sense, then simply ask him, would you mind putting the towel into the hamper? The other day, we have a stainless steel sink, and he poured his glass of orange juice into the sink, and the pulp settled. And I looked at the pulp, and I said, babe, do you mind the next time you empty the glass into the sink, just spray it down? Because if you don't spray it down, the pulp dries on the stainless steel. He goes, oh, I never knew that. It's that simple. That's simple.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's when you come from that type of home where your feelings, your needs, your desires aren't honored or met, that you develop a type of thinking that is, this person's always working against me, or they potentially could be working against me. And then that type of thinking plays out in future relationships, which allows you to perceive the interaction a certain way as opposed to just what it actually might really be. And always having to be aware of that old way of
Oh,
thinking.
you always have to be aware of it, you know. And let's face it, you know, when you grow up in a home and you're picked on and you're bullied in school, and then you manifest relationships where, you know, people abuse you, you know, this is part of your download. It's you're not crazy if you're afraid the shoe's going to drop.
Mm-hmm.
You're not crazy because you're afraid everything's great now, but before long, he's going to leave or she's going to change. Before long, you know, something's going to happen. It's a defense mechanism. You're just waiting for the next thing to happen. But you don't realize, in terms of the law of attraction, what you focus on, you create. So when there's abandonment, I just trained a woman this week, well, last week, and she said to me, you know, I have this fear of abandonment. And I said, well, where are you in your life now? And she's like, oh, my wife left me. You know, I have no contact with my kids. So I said, are you abandoned? And she's like, yeah. I said, that is your fear manifesting. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm very aware of my fears, and I stay above my fears by, Lisa, what do you want? What do you want? Because if I wasn't conscious, I would have married my first husband in a different body. I would have
Mm-hmm.
moved to a different zip code, but it would have been rinse, recycle, repeat. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm mature enough and I'm humble enough to say, I know that I have this codependency thing, and I know that I'm used to being disappointed by the people that I love. And I know if I'm not careful of that, I can very easily make a big thing out of nothing.
Right, right. And that's that program playing over where you actually keep your things, the things that you really want, from coming into your life because you're seeing through those old filters or lenses.
It's not your fault. It's the way, you know, and this is why I do what I do, because, you know, as long as I'm here, I want to wake people up, because you are unaware until the moment you're unaware, you are unaware.
Right,
So
right.
it's like, what do you mean I'm not aware? If you're not choosing your thoughts, you're not highly conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness exists on a spectrum, and it goes up and it goes down. And so
Mm-hmm.
I could be highly conscious having a conversation with you. I could end this interview and go vacuum and be completely unconscious. I've done that 1,000 times. My mind can go back on loop thinking about crappy thoughts again. Right. And so I respect the fact that my consciousness is something that goes up and comes down. And
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not careful, and I pay attention to my solar plexus, so this tells me where I am. So if
Yeah.
I'm in constriction, I know that I might not have a very good train of thought operating. If I'm in the flow, no, things are pretty good in the mental space. But it's up
Mm.
to me to use my free will to expand my consciousness on will. And if I don't, I'm in trouble.
Mm. I love what you said there about, I mean, I think it's called the Manipura chakra, the power chakra, and using the stomach as a sign and sense of when that's contracting or expanding, and using that as an indicator to your relationship to the world and the reality. I mean, I do the same thing. There's times where if I've known a boundary's been, and this never happens anymore, but when I know there's a boundary being violated, if like that gets, hit or
Yep.
punched, people talk about gut punches, like
Yep.
energetically, that's what it is. It's someone pushing through your own will. Okay, my will's being hacked. This isn't okay. And obviously that never happens now, but I remember when it used to, and I had to become aware of it. And
Oh, yeah.
I think it's really cool to have. It's just really great to talk to someone else who has that worldview and that experience of their subjective reality. Really, it's
It's
cool.
important to be, that's why it's so important to be self-aware and self-responsible and self-accountable and non-codependent. Because if you walk through the world thinking that the world owes you something, you're in trouble. If, if you walk through the world thinking that everybody's got to agree with you, your life is going to suck. If you
Yeah,
walk through the world thinking that everybody has to agree with you, you're not going to get very far. Because
right.
your expectations are of these people, are your expectations, but you're setting yourself up for failure, because First of all, people can't read your mind, and people are entitled to their own perception of you. And when you set an expectation of someone, it becomes a pass or a fail. It becomes a pass or fail, right? And now you're focused on something outside of you as being responsible for your level of success, or you're focused on something outside of you as responsible for your level of happiness, or
Mm,
your level of fulfillment. You know, this ties back to attachments. So I have attachments. I think things should be a certain way, and they're not, and that's why I'm suffering.
mm,
You know,
mm,
and taking people on the journey. You know, codependency is all about attachments,
mm-hmm.
and it's attachment to an idea. I take care of this person. This person should behave a certain way because I take care of them.
Right, right,
No,
right.
no, you can't control that other person. And in your taking care of this person, you're trying to control an outcome. You're trying to, I mean, I've lost count of how many clients I've coached who were married to alcoholics, who stayed with them through the worst phases of their life. And when the alcoholic got sober, they left.
Mm-hmm. Mm,
And the codependent is like, how could or he leave me, or how could she leave me? I did so much for them. I was there for them. And so you think that if I take care of this person, they're never going to leave me. And that makes you feel very fragile, because
mm,
you control whether or not someone stays with you, lies to you, loves you, abandons you, dies, gets sick, moves away, whatever. You can't control that.
mm,
So
mm,
love has to be a very a freeing experience. I'm going to love you freely, and that's why it's so important to manifest someone who's equally yoked,
mm.
because there's more freedom, there's less angst, there's less fear. I don't have to say, be home by 9, don't drink, don't go out with your friends, don't watch porn, don't talk about me behind my back. If I manifest someone, make sure you go to work, don't spend your money gambling. If I manifest somebody who is equally yoked to me, I don't have those fears.
Right,
So it's
right.
easier to love in a freeing way.
Mm,
Right. And so, because those fears aren't there, if I manifest someone who has a lot of these problems, and I think all I just have to do is manage his money, or manage her money, or give her money, or, say yes when I mean no, and just do everything that she needs me to do, she'll never leave me. Right. You're doing this out of lack.
right,
And
right.
what's going to happen is lack. So you're not doing it out of the purest form of love, which is I love myself, therefore I'm able to love you just
Mm,
as you are. Yeah, so love is complicated, and I think that adults should really consider who their role models were for love,
mm,
because
mm-hmm.
that's insight into how your perceptions of love and your beliefs and your patterns around love. So if you want to have a mature relationship, you really should think about who taught you how to relate.
Mm.
That's your model.
There's like three or four big points there, and so I'm trying to think of which I think would serve best for everyone. Can we go into, Lisa, when you talked about this finding someone who's equally yoked? I want to kind of take that and connect that to the unintegrated, maybe inner child, or the unhealed inner child, because I see a lot of connections and correlations with that with my clients, where some part of the inner child is still hoping or wanting something, like doing things out of want, instead of actually having the voice to say, hey, look, this is my needs, and I want these needs met, instead of just unconsciously giving without communicating expectations, and hoping that that other person will just give to them if they give enough. I mean, that's ultimately what I'm hearing there, is that if someone's in a relationship, like some of your clients who might have been alcoholics, and then, the their spouse was an alcoholic, and then they suddenly leave after they get healed and the person feels abandoned. Does that stem from having a childhood where maybe your parents never acknowledged your needs, so you didn't know how to voice your needs, so you would try all these back-end manipulative ways to actually have your needs met because you were scared of speaking up for what it is that you really needed, and then you had these unconscious expectations that played out in the relationship?
Yeah.
I'm kind of explaining it, but I'm just clarifying as well. And then is that, am I tracking that right?
Yeah. So I don't believe that the inner child can heal the inner child. So
Right.
I think you need to elevate your consciousness. What I mean by that is that you have to acknowledge that you have a higher self.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the higher self, that's what I do. I take my clients to this process where you have to acknowledge there's a higher self, where you have the ability to observe the wounds of the inner child. And the wounds of the inner child are valid, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're valid. Their needs, their wants, their fears, their shame. Of course they feel ashamed. That shame is there. And so I mean, how effective is it for a 3-year-old to try to heal a 3-year-old? It's not effective.
Right. Right.
So you need a higher version of yourself to step in and say, I see you. I feel you. Your wounds are valid. So you step in, it's reparenting yourself. You step in as higher self and you validate everything that the inner child has experienced. So the goal really is to help the inner child understand, yes, these needs are very valid and you have a right to express yourself. Now, when you express a need to someone, if you want to relate, there's an art to relating. So I think sometimes we can fumble as healing codependents or just people who are wounded. We're healing. We never set boundaries, and all of a sudden we come out setting boundaries like King Kong. We're being just I want this now. I'm tired of being repressed.
Right.
Hear me roar. It's like, whoa, like chill out. Like we're relating. So boundaries are basically negotiation. So it's like, look, this is my boundary. This is how I feel. And I hope that you can honor it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you can't, I need to renegotiate the relationship. You might not even want to say that. You just know in your head, I'm going to throw this out there. Because when you set a boundary with someone, you're saying, I would like to continue to be in a relationship with you, please.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, this is what I need. So I'm honoring the wounds of the inner child, but higher self, the negotiator, the executive is saying, I got this. This is the way we're going to do this, inner child.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to speak our need quietly, calmly, maturely, logically, reasonably. We're going to put it out there on the table and we're going to negotiate. And we're going to see what happens. Maybe she'll say yes. Maybe she'll say no. At that point, we figure out what we want to do about this relationship. Because if this boundary is non-negotiable, we can't stay. And that's okay. And that's okay. So in terms of the wounds of the inner child are absolutely valid. They come out sideways when you still have shame. They come out sideways when you don't know how to validate yourself. They come out sideways when you haven't yet had enough elevation in your consciousness where you recognize that there are levels to consciousness, that your emotions are valid, but they should not run your life because emotions don't run in rational channels. If you come from trauma, your amygdala is lit up like the 4th of July, which means logic and reason is knocked offline, which means that you really it's your responsibility to calm your inner self down, to calm the amygdala down so the prefrontal lobe can come back online. You can think about the way that you feel so that you can calm yourself down and figure out where the violation was and what the need is so that it doesn't come back out of offensive. Because if you want to be in a relationship with someone, you have to care how you negotiate a boundary. You come at me like King Kong, I'm shutting you down. You have no respect for me. It's your way or the highway. I could be completely wrong. But if you want to be in a relationship with me, we have to negotiate. There has to be fairness on both sides. That's negotiation. That's a relationship.
Right, right. Well, and it's great because a lot of the times I've seen just in my life in the past, but also some of my clients' lives, is when someone has had that repressed childhood and then they come out really upset and angry and like, I'm going to speak my truth. And, and there's no, it's like that people get defensive, the wall goes up, stonewalling starts happening. And I see it all the time where someone feels like they have that new sense of self come out. The stone, like people put up a wall naturally because that's what human beings do energetically when they feel attacked. And then the other person feels that stonewalling and then they start shouting even more. And it's just this beating like this and it doesn't go back and it creates chaos. And then eventually people part both ways.
Yeah, it's sad because it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that's because we live in a very emotional society.
Mm-hmm.
What I hope that my work brings more logic and reason to the emotional sides of experiences, because without logic and reason, we're all screwed. You have to learn to think about the way that you feel. And yes, your feelings, it's such an art to be able to master your emotions.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got to be able to say, I know she's shutting me down and I know she's ignoring me and I'm okay. And it's not about her anymore. It's about how am I going to move forward? I had to go through this with my mother. My mother was raised by an alcoholic and she projected all that nasty stuff on me. And I always felt like an obligation. I always felt my mother did not like me. As I got older, I felt jealousy. I felt envy. I felt hatred from my mother. And so as I got older, the first time I confronted her, it was like, get out of my face. Like, I'm done with you. Like, move.
Right.
Yeah, that's like, I found my voice. You're wrong. I'm right. I'm done. I'm not 12 anymore. Move out of my way. And we didn't speak for a year. But during that time, I was learning the art of healing from codependency. I was learning the art of forgiveness. I was learning the art of understanding that she was the adult child of an alcoholic. She had no sophistication, right? So I was learning all of this coming into my own, and conversations began to soften. So this is what I think, Mom. Well, I don't think that, Lisa. Okay. Okay. So,
Lisa, do you think it's possible, if you've had this type of relationship growing up with a parent, do you think it's possible to build a healthy relationship with a narcissistic parent or a codependent parent? Like, can you redefine and recreate the relationship? Do you think that's possible?
it's only possible for your half. You're not responsible for their half. So in other
Right.
words, like, I don't think that you can have a healthy relationship with a narcissist. It's just not possible. But you can have a healthy relationship with yourself and know that whatever relationship you have with a narcissist, is going to be limited. So in other words, like, I have a relationship with my dad who I think has high narcissistic traits, but let's define relationship. I expect nothing from him.
Right. Not
He's
much.
my father. I call to check on him. I understand that he is way below the veil of consciousness. He can offer me nothing emotionally. And I'm not that wounded little girl anymore. So I don't need him anymore to validate me, So, and so I've changed. Before I healed, I would be angry at my father for the things that he said and things that he did because I had an expectation of him. But is it really realistic to expect a narcissist, someone whose mother committed suicide at 3, somebody whose father was a violent alcoholic? Is it realistic for me to think that my father can have empathy for anyone else? No. Once I understood my father's background, it was like, oh, okay. These experiences shaped him. I have no right to change them. As a being that wants to stay on the enlightenment path and wants to heal and wants to help others transition, I've got to detach from that which I can't control. And I've got to surrender to what I can't control and accept it. Doesn't mean I like it, because I don't. I'd love to have an amazing relationship with my father. He's 78 years old.
Mm.
I'm not going to have the relationship I wanted, right? And then there are some people whose parents are god awful. You should never talk to this person again. And that's okay. But be okay with that decision and the consequences of those actions. There are parents who are absolutely abusive. I heard one story not that long ago where there was a death in the family, and the mother said to another child, the wrong child died.
Mm.
And then when confronted, the mom's response was, well, I had a better relationship with that child than I have with you.
Mm.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
There are some parents that are detrimental to a child's mental health. My ex-husband is detrimental to my children's mental health. So they don't talk to him. That was a decision they made on their own.
Mm-hmm.
That may change one day, but right now, where my children are, 31, 28, and 22, they can't talk to him without having a visceral experience to being rejected and unheard.
Okay. Lisa, I'm really excited, and I think this will be the last question. And then, are you okay with taking some questions out from
Sure.
the audience? I'm really excited to ask this question because I haven't. This has been something that's been coming up as a revelation recently that I'm seeing is on offer potentially for humanity when they've come from these types of backgrounds and relationships. When I look out at society, I see the internet's come online within the last 30 years. We have free access to information, which is changing the way that we relate. It's changing the way we relate to ourselves, our identity. And for the first time, I am actually seeing, and this possibility really excites me, the possibility that the generation before can help their parents heal. Now I know that's risky, like walking terrain, but like for instance, my father, I can see all the programs, because once you heal from them, you see all the programs that your parents inherited from their parents. Yep. And you can clearly see it. Is it possible through I guess for that next generation, not from a place of you weren't good enough, Dad, or you didn't meet my expectations, not from a place of a hurt inner wounded child, but from a place of I'm a grown adult now. I have my own needs taken care of. I see where my dad or my mom or the people who birthed me into existence are still hurting. Is it possible for you to help them let go of the programming that you once inherited and then healed? I hope that question made sense. And I know that's like, risky, maybe like eggshell ground, but I wanted to get your take on that.
I think that, anytime you heal, right? This is my feeling. They say there's no such thing as space, that everything is happening at once, right? So if there's no such thing as space, then as I heal, I'm helping to heal maybe people in my own family. Maybe my grandmother's healed, maybe my mother's healed. She's passed on now. But I do believe that because karma is cause and effect, right? And the world is holographic. So if you plant an apple seed, you don't get a banana tree. So if you have two alcoholics come together, you get two, you get a codependent, right? You get a shame-based codependent. That codependent doesn't do recovery work. She or he gives birth to a few more codependents, and so on, and so on, and so on, until someone awakens from all this freaking pain and says enough is enough, and peels themselves off the karmic wheel, which can be done consciously because this is a free will zone, but it takes effort. In terms of of course, as you heal, you're going to help your parents heal, whether they acknowledge it or not. But when you change the way you deal with people, you change the recipe of the cookie. So if I'm not reacting to my father anymore, our relationship shifts. It has to.
Right.
So if I'm not punishing my parents anymore because they did me wrong, the relationship shifts.
Right.
As I take response, I know my mother benefited from my healing. I absolutely know it.
Mm-hmm.
She said to me, Lisa, you're an amazing mother. I wrote my book, The Road Back to Me. My knees were shaking. I thought, oh my God, if my parents ever find out about this book, they'll never talk to me again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But my brother-in-law committed suicide. He was the adult child of an alcoholic. He shot himself in my sister's backyard, left 2 kids behind. She wanted to leave him. There was a very dysfunctional and meshed codependent relationship. Absolutely no interdependence. He was completely dependent upon my sister. And when she said, I'm done, he lost it.
Mm.
So when I got that news, I said, I have to write this book, even if my parents never speak to me again. If one person understands what codependency is, if one person understands living below the veil, and this helps them free themselves, it'll be worth it. And turns out she found out about the book. She read a little bit about it online, and she called me and she said, I know about your book. And I turned white. I was like, oh, here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. And she said, and I'm very proud of you.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, I understand your message. I know what you're trying to do. So I know that breaking through, that's why I call myself the breakthrough life coach, but breaking through that barrier and that fear, that filial fear, and honoring myself and taking a chance and following my own heart, right? That was the turning point for my mom, because she was able to, it gave her something to look at. It was different. If I had, my sister hasn't healed yet, my brother hasn't healed yet, right? So my mother had nothing in terms of relating to my brother and sister, nothing's different. I gave my mother something different to look at, a different possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she never freed herself of her relationship with my father, unfortunately, before she died, I know I could tell by the way that she felt around my children, the shift in me helped to shift her. And we never even had a conversation about it.
Mm.
But I don't think that, I think it's like when someone quits alcohol, it can be really annoying. Like, you shouldn't drink. You might be an alcoholic. Or when someone stops smoking, oh my God, stop smoking. They want you to stop, right? And when someone becomes aware of codependency, you see it everywhere. And you want to tell your friends, that's codependent. You want to tell your brother, that's codependent. It's like, shut up with this codependency stuff.
Right.
So when I woke up, it was like, I know why my family's so screwed up. I get it. My uncles, I can see it, but they didn't hear it because my goal was to fix them.
Right. Right.
I was trying to control the narrative, and took me a while to like focus on yourself. And that's when it took me a few years because it felt like I was abandoning my family. Like,
Definitely.
you're going to die in this, man. You're going to die. Dysfunctional marriages, gambling, narcissism, you're going to die in it, So I had to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really hard. But that's when I created my website. That's when I wrote my book. That's when I wrote the second book. I'm up to my 7th book. I have online. I just let it go, dude. I was like, okay, I'm going to speak. And it's like the field of dreams. I'm going to build it and people will come. And they have.
Right.
So now I talk to people who actually want to hear it. And it makes such a difference to like work with people who want to hear what I have to say instead of like hitting my brother over the head with this information. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a much more beautiful space to come from, I think, when there's this word that I use. It's called Vigriya. It's from the yogic tradition. And Vigriya means passionate, detached action.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it as a philosophy. And I mean, not from the mind, but from the being state. Absolutely. And really just taking action from that space, because it's not frustrating for you as the self. And it's just, okay, this is like the truth of reality. And why wouldn't I express and be and interact with reality as it is? And really, that's such a powerful place to come from. And people can feel that sense of detachment from outcome, but at the same time, that passion behind it. And finding that middle space, I think, is incredibly, incredibly valuable in any endeavor in life.
Oh, well, the thing is, when you think that with your family, you have a captured audience, they're going to want to hear what you have to say. And when you realize they don't,
Right.
Then you've got to turn around and go home and like talk to nobody for a while.
Right.
When you're building an online business or you're becoming a life coach, it takes tremendous desire and passion to just come from that space of authenticity and like, I know this to be true and I can help you. But
Mhm.
it takes a while for, the universe well, for you to create enough momentum that people start to listen. And then it takes time to build online communities. It takes time to build coaching programs. This all takes time. But when you first start to do this, it's like crickets, and I think a lot of people, entrepreneurs, they give up because they don't have that audience, right? And
Mm,
they don't have the faith that in what they're saying is really, really valuable. So they give up.
mm,
So when I learned all this stuff, I thought that naturally I wanted to teach it to my family, but they like rejected me. They cursed at me. I mean, literally cursed at me. Like, stop, mind your own effing business. I was like, okay, you know, and that was
Stay in your lane.
like,
Stay in your lane.
absolutely. And I didn't realize that I was being so annoying. I thought that I was coming from a really good place. But then
Right.
as I learned more about the law of attraction and I stayed on the path, I realized, I have no right to control their reality.
Right.
I,
Yeah.
this is, if they have to, in my opinion, if they have to re-embody and learn, through a different life experience, that's okay. That's
Hmm.
okay. Who the hell am I?
Mm,
And so I had to turn around and just focus on my message and, believe in myself and spew this information anywhere I could.
yeah. Beautiful. Lisa, thanks so much for sharing all this. This has
Sure.
been really wonderful. Are you okay with taking some questions out from the audience?
Sure.
Cool. So there was a number of questions here. So I'm going to scroll back a little bit. And guys, if you have any questions, we got about time and space for 2 or 3 questions for Lisa here. I'm gonna go to Stacy first. Stacy says, is it a codependent trait to desire seek support from your partner emotionally or spiritually? When do you find yourself not quite being able to do it on your own? Where's the fine line? It's a great
I,
question.
I think that if you're in a healthy relationship, that support should come pretty naturally. If you're in a healthy relationship, your partner should be pretty much attuned to you. But if you're in a relationship, with someone who might not be that attuned to you, then it's important that you be honest with what you need and what you feel. And so there's nothing wrong with asking for what you need in a healthy relationship. Where it gets a little fuzzy is, does my sense of self rely on the outcome? Does my sense of self rely on this external support? It can't. So, in
Mm,
other words, it's nice if you get it, but you can't need it to the point that if you don't get it, you collapse. So,
mm,
I have a partner. I expect him to be there if I need him, and vice versa. But if he's unable to be there, I'm not going to collapse because he can't. Right. And then I'm going to figure out later on, once I get out of my crisis, why wasn't he there for me? Like,
mm,
what was going on? So again, I'm always going to be willing to negotiate, right? Because things happen. Maybe he was going through something at work that he didn't share with me yet. And he had his own stuff going on. That's okay. But we're going to have a conversation about it, right? And so we're looking for patterns of someone consistently letting you down, or patterns of someone not being there for you, patterns of you being there for other people and them not being there for you. So I hope did that make sense?
that made perfect sense to me the way that you said it, Lisa. Thank you. Yeah, I love that. And we'll check in on Stacy's comment a little bit
Sure.
later from now. And I think she said, so an interdependent person doesn't feel fear around being vulnerable with their fellow interdependent partner.
I think that depends on what type of fear we're talking about, but I think that fear is a very natural human emotion. And anytime you exert a boundary, I just did a video on this, that unhappiness is not normal. Right? When you come from a home where unhappiness was the norm, unhappiness becomes your norm, and that is not normal. So we really have to really take a hard, am I happy or am I unhappy? Is unhappiness my norm? Like, what am I what am I settling for? Like, what's going on? So I think
Mm,
when you set a boundary, there's a natural fear there because it creates vulnerability. Because when I set a boundary or I ask for something, I'm showing up naked, right? And now that you know this need, there's a chance you're going to say no. And now I've exposed my weakness to you. So setting a boundary creates a sense of vulnerability. That's why you are so strong and you are heroic if you say, I think, I feel, I need, and I want. So there's always going to be a natural fear. Just because you're interdependent doesn't mean that you never feel fear again. In fact, when you're interdependent, I could have a fear about telling my husband how I feel. I'm going to say it anyway. That's how I remain interdependent. That's how I remain fierce in my own self and true to myself. Like, I had a fear and I told him what I needed and what I felt. Anyway, I did it fairly, looking to negotiate and looking to hear, not expecting him to say what I want him to say, the way I want him to say it. No, that's not fair. How often I have to coach people out of that mindset. Do not enter that conversation saying to yourself, your husband or your wife has got to say this exactly the way you want to hear it. That's not a relationship. That's dictatorship. No, that's not a relationship. Be willing to hear what they said and be willing to change what you thought. Because maybe you thought this person did this on purpose. I'm coaching a mom and a daughter now, and her mind is being blown by this idea that in all these years that she thought her mother had abandoned her, she didn't, or not as deeply as she thought. And as the mother learns to say, but this is what happened. My clients got to reframe her reality of her mother, which is really hard to do. It's heroic. So this maturity stuff is tough. It's hard. It's hard to be a mature, thinking, cognitive, conscious, fair, humble, authentic, vulnerable human being. It's really hard, but it is the goal. What's the alternative? To be a reactive robot on autopilot, full of wounds and thinking everybody else should be the way you want them to be so you could be happy? That's not going to work.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. That was great. I was speaking with a client the other day, and she was, I could tell her it was her inner child that was coming forward and really wishing this. And she says, I wish everyone could just be loving and kind and caring. And I just told her, I said, that would be great. I would love that too, but that's not the reality of the world. And part of adulting and growing up is accepting that the world isn't what you want it to be, or the projections or the fantasies or whatever it is that you may have. And people aren't that either. And it's really learning to see it for what it is, speak to what you perceive it as, and being willing to adapt and change as you go along throughout life. And that's really, I think, the evolution and growth process in and of itself.
Well, if everybody was nice, we'd all get off easy.
Right.
Right? If everybody was nice, I'd never have to set a boundary. I'd never have to show you who I am. I'd never have to show you my teeth. I never have to risk you not liking me. I never have to risk you abandoning me. So, if everybody was nice, right, there wouldn't be much growth in that. And so the contrast is to the awakened person, contrast is very, very beneficial. So when I go to Target and the cashier is really ornery, I have an opportunity to flow love. I have an opportunity not to react. Right? I have an opportunity to imagine, wow, what's her day like? Doesn't mean I'm going to let her abuse me, but I have an opportunity to observe how I feel and monitor how I feel and decide to just get my bag and go.
Right.
And not take it with me, not call my friend. You wouldn't believe this girl, and call my husband. I'm keeping it alive. If the universe is like, more of that, please, right? That's what you want. That's what you're focusing on. Okay. So stop off at Costco and let's see how nice that cashier is. So we have to be so aware of what we're drawing in and what we're releasing. You have to be aware.
Beautiful. Lisa, do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Cool. We're going to go to hypocritical here. And they say, as a person with disabilities, bad days, I've an amount of need for help from others. Questions. Any tips or ways to more easily discern the difference between those needs for help and being codependent?
I think
Do
that's
you,
what happened.
I just wonder, do you understand that question, Lisa?
So, as a person, this person, whoever this person is, has disabilities.
I
Is that
think
what
so. I think so. Yeah, I think that's what he's saying.
okay? I think that you have to be fair about your limitations. And so, if I have particular physical limitations, oh my God, you need people, and that is so difficult to need people, right? Because to need someone is to admit that you can't do it on your own, which is so scary. To need someone is so freaking scary because, again, if these people fail you, you feel alone. And sometimes your survival depends on needing others. So it's very frightening to need someone on any level. And so when there are physical limitations, that is a fact and a reality that must be surrendered to.
Mm,
There should be no guilt or shame. Although I would imagine, when I get sick, I have guilt and I have shame over it, right? I don't want anyone to take care of me. And so I can only imagine how difficult it is to have a disability and have to need people. And so this is my best advice, is to work on accepting that that's a reality and it's not your fault.
mm,
And then also accept what your limitations are and be fair about what your limitations are and what they're not. So in other words, like, you have to in your own head decide where the line is. So if I need help feeding myself, then I need to find people who are okay with assisting me with this disability. And I have to work on being thankful and gracious and all that, and feeling having gratitude for it, but not feeling shame because it's not my fault I have this disability, because that's debilitating. Gratitude with a disability or some type of a challenge is an abundant energy, and you will manifest people who are loving and who want to participate in your care, which is a beautiful thing. And there are people who want to do that, right? So they expand their energy when they're in that experience. So it's important to make sure that you're in gratitude for that. But I also think it's important that we be very careful about not abusing that, but paying attention to when maybe there's something that I can do for myself. Make sure that I am doing everything that I can do for myself, so that when people are involved in my care, they know that I am going to do everything I can to take care of what I can. And here's the line: these are things that I can't take care of, and I need your assistance with that. Um, so I think that in your head, you're asking about discernment. So discern what need is absolutely a need and what is a want. So if I want someone to sit with me for 3 hours and talk to me, that's a want, but it's not a need, right? I need someone to help me put my shoes on, or I need someone to transport me to the doctor's office. I need that. I might want this, but I know that that's a want versus a need. And I think we should all live in gratitude. I think that's the goal, regardless of how bad it is. If I've been there, severe panic attacks. Like, I couldn't feel my fingers and I was having tunnel vision. And I stood in front of my sink and I said, I'm so worried about how I'm going to take care of these kids. And I'm so worried about how I'm going to pay for this house. And I have no job. And I don't know what's going to happen next. And working myself into a frenzy about what if, what if, what if. And I realized the only energy that was going to save me was gratitude. And so even though the future was, I couldn't see a future, and nothing in my physical reality had any evidence that made me believe I was going to be okay. Quite the contrary. I had no tangible evidence that everything was going to be okay. I knew, you better get grateful. And I stood in front of my sink for 20 minutes with my hands under the faucet. And I said I'm grateful for water. I'm grateful for water. I'm grateful for this faucet. I'm grateful for this sink. I'm grateful for this drain. I'm grateful for this floor. I'm grateful for these walls. I'm grateful for the ceiling. I'm grateful for this roof. I'm grateful that the kids are healthy. I'm grateful I can breathe. I'm grateful that I'm here. And it was just grateful, grateful, and that suddenly I was out of the panic attack.
Mm.
So I think regardless of where you are, make sure that you're flowing in a state of gratitude. Regardless of any disability or any challenge, it will change your life.
That's beautiful. I love that response. I did a video the other day on explaining the mechanics. I call it from a four-dimensional perspective of how gratitude, that energy and motion actually generates things toward us from generating that emotion. So I love that. I love it. I love it.
Well, the energy that you put out has to return to you. And as it returns to you, it's quantifying. So that's why it's so important that, that's why people say to me, oh, a narcissist gets away with everything. And go, no, 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 no. Nobody escapes. Nobody escapes. You have to stay out of the way. I tell my clients, like, grease yourself up with like spiritual Vaseline. So like their energy, like just flies right off you. Don't take it on. And if you sidestep someone's negative energy, just trust that it's like a boomerang. The energy must return. It has to return as long as you don't interfere. Let the energy return, because that person will learn their lessons just like you in time. It might take many, 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 many embodiments perhaps, but mind your business. What have they taught you? So they're in your life. You've got great contrast, great pain. Are you a better person because of it? Well, that's why they came into your life.
Beautiful.
That's why they came into your life. So,
Lisa, thanks so much for taking the time out to be here. We really appreciate everything that you've shared, your wisdom and your experience. You've brought a lot to the table, and I know it really benefited a lot of people today, and that'll continue to benefit a lot of others. The last thing that I want to ask, if you had one message to leave with the world before you beamed up, before you left the earth, what would that be?
You are enough. You're enough. You are enough. You may have been brainwashed to believe that you weren't enough. Societal nonsense, conditioning, the way the world is set up to, compare yourself to others. I know a lot of people believe in competition. It keeps people hungry. I'm not somebody who believes that you need to compete. I think it separates you from other people. I think that you can make just as much money believing that everyone's enough, just like you are enough. You don't have to step on someone's head or be better than someone else. You just have to be yourself. I wish that, part of my mission is that you have to know that you're not as awake as you think you are. You have to know that. You have to know that consciousness exists on a scale. And you better believe or better know what you believe in regards to you being enough. Because if you don't believe that you're enough, you're never going to be able to manifest your dreams. You won't get enough wind beneath your sail. Because what you believe, you're going to look out into the world and go, oh, I knew that was going to happen. I knew I couldn't do it. Oh, yeah. I knew I was never going to get that contract. I knew my channel was never going to grow. I knew that I was going to get passed over. I knew they were going to say no. I knew that's what you're going to create that reality. And it all comes from, I'm not enough. You are as important as Oprah. You're as important as Queen Elizabeth. You are here. You have consciousness. You matter. You matter. You're vital. I don't care if you have a disability. I don't care if you're in jail. You matter. You have a story to tell. You have innate gifts. You are a being of love and light energy. Even though you may have had really, 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 really dark childhood experiences, there's a light inside of you. And if you can move towards that light and away from the dark, in time, that light just gets bigger and bigger and brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. And you help to elevate the consciousness of the planet. And everybody benefits just from being around you. So you are enough.
It's a beautiful message. I love it. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Lisa, do you have anything that you're doing right now? I know you mentioned you had the 12-week breakthrough coaching program. Can you tell us just a little bit more about that and what that's about?
So So one of the things that I always say is it's not you, it's your programming. And it's my tagline. And I created it to help people question, like, well, what is my programming, right? You can't fix a hole in the wall you can't see. And when you come from a dysfunctional home, you have all this subconscious crap, and you don't realize that it's become a blueprint for your life.
Mm.
And when you come from a dysfunctional home, you don't have life skills. So if I said to you, if you've never had a chocolate shake, and I said to you, what's a chocolate shake taste like? Do you miss it? You'd say, no, right? But what if I told you that you need a chocolate shake to live a happy life? You're not looking for the chocolate shake because you have no experience of a chocolate shake, even though you need it to have a healthy life. And so I created a 12-week class that takes people on this journey of, awakening to what went wrong, learning life skills, learning to be a little bit more self-reliant and self-accountable, learning to change what you can. And the third phase is the ascension phase, where it's teach people basically how to create a blueprint for happiness and success.
Mm.
And so I moderate the class myself along with a team, and we host it online twice a year. We have a summer session and a fall session. The next class launches June 4th. And like I said, I moderated it myself over 3 months, and it's a great experience. The breakthroughs are just amazing.
Beautiful.
So if anyone's interested.
Beautiful. And guys, if you want to check out the link for that is for her channel as well as right there in the YouTube description box. Go ahead and click that if you feel like that resonates for you. Lisa, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it. Really, it means a lot. And I'm excited to see just, all of it, what continues and what goes forward. And we'll go back and forth.
Yeah. And good luck with your work. Good luck with your channel.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Beautiful. Well, that's all we got for this time, guys. If you'd like, check out also the Sacred Relationship series Laura and I are doing. That'll be going on for another month here. We got more interviews coming up. And other than that, that's all we have. I have another live coaching session later on going on Thursday. If you'd like, feel free to stick around for that. That's all we have for this time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Bye, everybody.